Alright, this is just a quick tutorial to kind of help you get started using Sketchup. This is made for the Utah Weatherization program. So there's a couple of things that I use this tool for in our weatherization program a ton. So I'm just going to show you how to get started doing a couple of those things. This is not a comprehensive explanation of all the tools by any means, but just a couple little skills to get you going. So first and foremost, you're going to go to Sketchup.com, and the first time you go there, you're going to have to click on Try Sketchup. You'll have to tell them you're using it for personal use or professional use or whatever, and kind of give them a little info and create a user profile, and then you'll be able to sign in. Once you have a user profile and you're signed in, then go up to the top of the screen and click on My Apps. Now, Sketchup has a ton of really cool tools like Pro, Viewer, and a few different things that are paid features that do amazing things. But for what I use in the weatherization program, the Sketchup for Web is a free option, and it's all I need. You can also download, or you used to be able to download some free options of the desktop software. But for right now and for this demonstration, just all we're going to do is we're going to launch the Sketchup for Web. So click Launch, and once you get inside there, you're going to click on Create New, and we're just going to open up the simple template with feet and inches. When you get in there, you'll see that this lady's standing there, and that we're now inside of an environment. It looks like we have some sort of a horizon in the background, and we have these green, red, and blue axes guides to just show us where we're at. Now, the tool that you're going to use, a couple of the tools you're going to want to use right off the bat is you want to know how to move around. So to move around in here, over on the left-hand side is the Orbit button. Now, if you've launched this on a desktop, these tools are going to be in a different location, but they work the same. So click on Orbit and select the Orbit tool, and then you're just going to move that Orbit tool wherever you want on your screen, and when you're ready to orbit, you have to click and hold down, and then it'll basically start moving you around whatever you're working on. So if we wanted to orbit around this person, then we click near that person and orbit around her. The other tool you're going to end up using a lot is the Pan tool. So the Pan tool is just going to let you move back and forth on whatever plane you're already on. So this will kind of help you move around. And then the other tool, there's a Zoom tool. If you have a scrolling ball or a scrolling wheel on your mouse, if you'll just scroll that wheel forward and backward, it will zoom you in and out. Or you can use the tools here to zoom in and out. So that's what you need to get going, just to move around. And then the other thing is that there's a push-pull tool that I use a lot. So let me show you how I use that. So if I was going to draw a house, and most of the time I'm just not even drawing the house in much detail. I'm just trying to draw the thermal boundary of the house. So I'm going to just grab the rectangle tool over here. And there's a few other tools, but just select rectangle and then drag it out here onto the ground. And you're going to click and hold and then drag diagonally across whatever area you want to draw a box. And then let go. And you'll notice that down here at the bottom of the screen, it's got the dimensions of that rectangle. Now, before you do any more clicks, you can, if you'll start typing in numbers right now, you can edit those dimensions. So if I need a box that is going to be 26 feet wide and 40 feet long, then once I've released that corner there, then using the numbers on my keyboard, I'm just going to type 26 and then a single apostrophe for feet, and then a comma, and then 40 and a single apostrophe for feet. So, and then I'll hit enter, and that will change that box to a box that is 26 by 40. Now I can use my orbit tool and my zoom in, zoom out tools to kind of situate things better and maybe get a look at this box from up above. I might switch by hitting Shift to the pan tool, and then maybe orbit around a little bit more so I can see. So now I can see that I have this box, and that would represent a house in most situations. And then the other tool that I use a ton is this push-pull tool. So I'm going to select push-pull, and then I'm going to come over here, and I'm just simply putting my mouse over it, and the push-pull tool will work on any surface that when you hover over it, it turns into dots. So if I hover over this tool and I click down on it and I hold, then I can move my mouse up, and that will actually drag that two-dimensional surface up, and now it's turned this thing into a three-dimensional box. And then I'll let go, and the same principle applies. So I drug that upwards, and it shows me I drug it up at a distance of 8 foot 5 and 1/16 of an inch. But I probably want to just change that to 8 feet. So I'm just going to go 8 and apostrophe and hit enter, and it had just made a quick adjustment, and now I know that I have a box. Let me hit my orbit tool. Now I know I have a box or a house with walls that are 8 feet tall. And I can zoom around that, and I can think about, you know, the shape of this house. Now if I wanted to, I could use my ruler to begin to make some other measurements. So I click on the ruler, and when I click on the ruler does a couple of things, but if you'll hover over a line, like if I wanted to make a measurement over here and have a ruler kind of make a line, then I just find a line on kind of that's heading in the same direction, or it's on the same axis, and I put the tape measure on that line, and I'll click and hold down, and I just drag in the direction that I want to go. You'll notice it's making a green line, so it's showing me that it's following that green axis. And if I wanted to drag that line out, say there was a wall out here that's like at about the 12-foot mark. So I just drag it out there anywhere, doesn't matter. I'm going to let go. And it moved it to like 17 feet, but again, before I do anything else, I'm just going to type in 12 feet and hit enter. And you'll notice that moved that line right back to the 12-foot mark. Now I can grab my pencil, and this will snap. If you'll notice, as you move the pencil along the line, it's going to snap to these intersections. So I'm just going to move my pencil to that intersection. I'm going to click once and let go, and it'll start to draw a line from that point to wherever I want it to go. So if I was drawing a line along the green axis, then I'd hold it on the green axis. If I wanted to go on the blue axis, I'd move it upward and it'll go blue. And if I want it to go on the red axis, and so forth. But in this case, I want it to be on the blue axis, and I want it to go down, and I'm just going to drag it until it gets down and snaps to that other wall, and then I'll click to finish, and that's it. So I drew a line. Now I'm going to go back over, and I'm going to grab my push-pull tool. Let's say that there was a part of the house here that was 12 feet this direction and 10 feet this direction. So I'm just going to drag and pull. It looks like I pulled that out about 11 feet, so I'm going to just type in 10 feet and hit enter, and it changed it back to 10 feet. Now once I'm done with my guide, then I'm going to go and I'm going to grab my eraser, and I'm just going to click down and kind of swipe across that and erase it. So those are the tools that I use the most, and then there's some other tools over here on the right that'll tell you a little bit about the entity information. And you may want to use those tools to, now that you've drawn this, so I'm going to orbit around. If you'll come back in here and just use the arrow tool and select something, this entity info will tell you all about it. So now that I've selected that surface, it's telling me that surface is 1,160 square feet. So now I know exactly the square footage of the whole house. Or if I was trying to find the area of one of my walls, then I could just click in here and go, okay, this wall, the area is 208 feet. Or if you wanted to say that these were the south-facing walls, but they're both 2x4 walls, they're both made up of all the same components, so you know they're both clad with siding or whatever. If you'll hit shift and hold it down, you can see it turn the cursor into a plus or minus. And then, so this one's selected. Now I'm going to go select this one, and now both of them are selected, and now I know that the total square footage of both of those is 288 feet. Now there's one last thing I want to explain really quick that you will need to use when you're building or drawing things in Google. Well, there's two things. One of them is you may begin using your layers tool to kind of differentiate between which component, or not component, but basically to kind of separate things out. Never mind. It looks like the online version does not let you use the layering tool, so that's one of the tools I use a lot. But the other tool I use a ton is the grouping tool. And the reason that you'll want to use the grouping tool is if you want to start drawing something that, say I'm going to draw another box, or in this case, let's say that this is the main floor, but I also need to draw the basement, and say the basement's a different shape than the main floor. And when I'm done, I'm going to want to be able to separate the area of the main floor from the basement. In order to do that, you need to actually group this main floor into a group so that when you start drawing other components, it doesn't attach those components to this component. You can draw them right next to it, but it won't attach them. So I'm zooming out to where I can grab everything that's in that group, and I put my cursor down here, and I click and hold, and I move up and to the right and let go, and it has selected, I'm going to orbit around this, it has selected everything on that building. But I don't want this person in the group or anything else, so so I've selected that. Now I'm going to click back to my select tool and put my cursor over this, and then I'm going to right click on my mouse, and this window will come up, and then I'm going to scroll down to this make group, and I'm just going to click on that. So it has made that entire thing into a group. Now if I needed to make some basement walls, I can actually copy this thing, and the way to copy it is, so I'm going to scroll down here and kind of get underneath this house, and I'm going to select this move tool, and the move tool will actually let me copy things. So I'm going to grab this box, and I'm going to grab it probably by this point right here. So I'm going to grab it by this corner, and I'm going to start moving it down, and you'll notice I'm moving it, see it's not red, it's not green, I'm moving it on the blue plane. So I'm going to move it down, and as I move it down, now that I moved it out of the way, I'm going to hit the control button, and the control button is going to basically make a copy of whatever I'm moving. So I'm going to hit control, and you'll see that the original will snap right back to where it was, but I'm moving this new copy, and I can move it right down and snap it right below the upstairs. And then you'll notice now I'm working on just this one group. But let's say that this basement didn't have this addition on it. So I'm going to go to my select tool, and I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to right click on this, and I'm going to, if I explode it, it'll ungroup it, but I'm not going to do that. I'm actually going to click to edit the group, and you'll notice that it's going to shade everything out that I'm not editing, and it highlights everything that I am editing. Now that I'm in edit mode, I can go grab my push-pull tool, and I can hover over these surfaces that are editable. These ones aren't editable, so nothing happens, but I'm just going to push this back in, and you'll notice with your push-pull tool, sometimes you can move it over to, like, I'm just saying I want to move this right flush with this other plane, so I'm just moving it, my push-pull tool over there, and it snapped that right to that face, and now I've basically resized my basement, so that it doesn't have this addition in it. And then I might grab my erase tool just to erase that line, so now when I'm selecting my areas or whatever on this side, then I'll be able to determine how big that space is or whatever. So, and then to get out of this mode, then I'm gonna go somewhere outside the bounds of this box, and I'm just gonna click out there, and it just unselected what I was doing or got me out of that editing mode. But you'll notice since these things are now grouped, if I try to use my push-pull tool, it gives me that little no signal because there are no surfaces to push or pull on until I actually get back into that group and edit the group. Now, if you're once you've done that, and a lot of times when I'm drawing, I leave these things in groups because I don't ever want them connected to each other. But I'm not sure if I'm explaining well what I mean by connected, but that group right there, if I grab that group and move it, because it is a group, it's not connected to the other group, so I can move it away from that group. But let me do this. So I'm going to explode both of these groups, and by exploding them, they're going to become connected to each other. So I'm going to hit the arrow key to select this. I'm going to right click and I'm going to hit explode. Now everything's editable again, and I'm going to do the same thing here and hit explode. Now that this is exploded, I'm going to grab my move tool and I'm going to try moving that box down. And you'll notice now it's connected to the box that was above it. So if you don't want the two pieces connected, then use the group tool. But usually once I've gotten to this point, then I can actually, whoops, I'm going to grab my orbit. Now I actually like to explode them because now I can say, okay, how many square feet is this? How many square feet is this? Without having to get in and into that edit group mode every single time to find out these sizes. So there is one last thing that I use a lot when I'm doing drawing in the Weatherization program. Once I've drawn this represents my thermal boundary, and so I like to color each surface once I have entered it into the audit. So to do that, you'd actually scroll down to materials, and you can select a color or two here in this freemium version. So I'm just going to select this color here, and then when I go back out onto my canvas, you'll notice I have a paint bucket, and basically I can start painting things. So once I've entered this south wall into my audit, I would click on that and just paint it. And so I've entered those two things. Now I can orbit around and enter in these two walls, and once I'm done with them, then I'll go click on that color and color those two things in. And I just use that because it helps me as I'm scrolling around. It's like, oh, wait a second, I haven't entered in these other two walls. Or once I've entered those walls in, then it'll help me to see, oh, now I need to enter in the attic. Or if I have some other strange things going on when I get to a foundation, then I can see, oh, you know, I have colored in, I entered in this basement floor, but I forgot to enter in this part of the thermal boundary. So that's how I use the tool a lot, is basically just to get the areas of my thermal boundaries.